Liz, I'll hand it off to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Diane. And thank you, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today with you all. I have come to realize over the breadth of my career that I am kind of invested in spirituality. I find it to be so meaningful and so important, and I seem to live and breathe it in my practice, in my mentality, in my worldview. And I may be unique in my role as a chaplain. When I first started out in chaplaincy, I had a patient say to me, "Chaplain, you're a chaplain? I thought all chaplains were old guys with big bellies." And I said, "Well, fortunately for me, I am neither of those things." But the reality is that while there are over 5,500 members of the Association of Professional Chaplains across religious and institutional settings, you're probably not going to meet one of us at a party. One day we'll get back to those parties, right, where we can meet random people, but we're kind of a rare breed of people. And chaplains can serve in a variety of places. They're traditionally found in hospitals, in prisons, in non-for-profits, in other institutional settings outside of the parish or the church environment. Chaplains come from all different walks of life, all different religious backgrounds. They can be ordained by a specific denomination, or they cannot be. Chaplains have hearts for the people that they serve, and they offer holistic and compassionate care and a non-anxious presences, theological insight, and unconditional positive regard. Chaplains advocate for those in their care by offering ethical a mindset, preserving cross-cultural engagement, promoting justice, peace, and accountability. My mission as a chaplain is to join with clients in helping them to connect to themselves, because oftentimes the events of life separate us from who we actually are. And I help them to connect to their God, whoever that God may be, whether it represents the God that I serve or a different God, and to their communities. So chaplaincy is an all-encompassing career path. It is a different way of being than other ways of serving. So I'm going to share my screen now and invite you on this journey with me to explore spirituality and gratitude. So hang on a second. All right. So I'm going to minimize this real fast. All right. So welcome to Spirituality and Gratitude in Recovery. So what is this spirituality that I'm inviting you to join with me on? As I describe my experience of spirituality and faith, I am cognizant that not everyone shares this same experience of spirituality or God. Some experiences of spirituality are in fact purely religious terms, equating it with God, faith, and prayer, while others see spirituality in terms of meaning making and connection. I would argue that all people at one point or another come in contact with spirituality, with a concept of the divine or God self. This contact does not mean that they make the ascent to belief, but rather they are presented with a reality of spirituality that invites them into a choice of belief or not. For example, following a spirituality group that I led on belief, a resident approached me to speak about a quote that I presented. And the quote is as follows on your screen. "Faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase." This quote by Martin Luther King Jr. brought up questions for this resident. And she said, "I don't feel like I know where the staircase is because I didn't grow up in a religious or spiritual household, but I feel like there's a staircase somewhere. How do I find it?" In our time together, I hope we begin the journey of finding our own staircases and envisioning what a staircase might look like for our clients. When asked, most people will say that spirituality and religion are not the same thing. Religion is often seen as a formal and specific belief pattern that involves belonging to specific groups, representing many established religious organizations like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and many others. Religion is seen to involve rituals and practices that are approved and encouraged by religious organizations. If we look at a study of membership in world religions, we find that Christianity remains the largest. It's followed by Islam, and then by those quote unquote unaffiliated, the nuns, right? Meaning atheist or agnostic. I call them the nuns because for chaplains, this group of individuals who show up in the hospital or in other places are perhaps the most challenging to figure out how to meet people who don't identify with any one specific religious practice or belief system. But spirituality has been defined as that which gives meaning and purpose in life, as well as a sense of personal identity and transcendence that motivates individuals beyond the practicalities of daily living. So spirituality has this broad meaning for living life, apart from and even related to organized religion. The concept of religion, of spirituality, is no longer confined to religion, nor is the practice of spiritual care located within any formal religious or spiritual tradition. So I'm presenting some images. So when people think about spirituality, these are some things that they connect to, right? This image of something beyond ourselves, some sort of connection that's on a higher plane, perhaps. Or maybe spirituality has something to do with nature, right? And experiencing this great big world that we live in. Or spirituality has to do with light and connecting to the themes of light in life, like hope, love. Or spirituality can, in fact, connect to organized religion. There are many people in this world who connect on a very deep level with their faith, with faith in an organized religion. And they practice it in such a way that they're filled with a spiritual sense, a deep, deep connection to not just the tenets of the faith, but the meaning behind it and the connection to life. Or then we have an image like this, right? We see a lizard, we see a hand, the moon. I don't know what this means, but maybe it means something for your client, right? And maybe it's our job as professionals to help clients discover what this means for them, how it connects to the moments in their lives. How do they understand spirituality on a daily sense and an existential sense and a meaningful sense, and how that helps them to process what they've been through in their lives and where they're going with their journeys. So you may be feeling scared right now, right? There's nothing like the scream. How do you handle this? How do you approach spirituality and engage on a real spiritual level with your client? Now, you don't need to be afraid. It's okay. No one is asking you to be an expert on it. What is being asked of you is that you be open to talking and processing spirituality with your clients, because they are, in fact, processing it in their own lives. Humans are naturally on a quest for meaning and belonging. If we think about Maslow's hierarchy, once our initial needs are met, we grow and we seek all of these themes of spirituality. So think for yourself, what is spirituality? How would you define it if you were asked? Is it about connecting to God, a sense of humanism, self-examination, or beauty, meaning, nature, connecting with something greater? What would your clients say if you asked them? Would they agree with you, or would they come up with something entirely different? The way in which clinicians and medical professionals conceive of spirituality can, in fact, be mismatched with how the people they care for frame the concept. Then any well-intentioned effort that you have to address those spiritual concerns may prove ineffective or even detrimental to people's well-beings. The possibility is very real, considering that many healthcare practitioners feel uncomfortable discussing spiritual matters with their clients and patients. So, if we think about this, the difference between how we feel about spirituality and the way that our clients do, it's important to understand what's going on there and what the differences are and how to make connections and bridge the gap between two different perceptions. In front of you is an article from, it's called The Understanding the Layperson's Perception of Prayer, a prototype analysis of prayer. This was a study done where the researchers asked lay people, meaning people who are not ordained or not holding roles within a church, to how they understand spirituality. The participants in this study were 81 females and 70 males from 26 countries, mostly the United Kingdom and the USA. Most of the participants were Caucasian between the ages of 18 to 62, with a median age of 39. They came from backgrounds of Christian at about 55%, agnostic 11.3%, no religion 25.8%, and 2% each of Buddhist and Muslim, and 4% from different religions. All of the participants were asked the question that's on your screen. They were told this is a study on the attitudes and attributes that people think of when they think about the word spirituality. For example, if you were asked to list the attributes of the word boat, you might write sailing, water, place to fish, dock. This study, however, is not concerned with the attributes of boat, but attributes of spirituality. Imagine that you are explaining spirituality to someone who has no prior knowledge of the word. Include what you feel is obvious, however, try not to just free associate. We are interested in what is common in people's conceptions of spirituality. There are no right or wrong responses, and the attributes that you generate may be positive or negative. So people were asked this question to think about it. You can think about for yourself, what would you say about what the attributes of spirituality are? What they found was that spirituality is rooted in an understanding of well-being and understanding and values. What you see on your screen now is the first round, where people put down what words come to mind when they think about spirituality. So all of these things play into it. These are some more that came up. The very last one is inner being, but we see words like way of life, morality, all of this connection words. Then the study looked at what the core features of spirituality are for people. And they found out that people identify spirituality mostly with the idea of God, prayer, heaven, higher power. You can think about for yourself if the words on the screen are actually the words that you would relate to spirituality, right? Some of us might think that spirituality is something more than yourself, non-specific. And yet here it is in front of you, that God comes up as the first concept. Then we get down further into more supernatural words as it goes along. Finally, they were asked how these words, how these concepts represent spirituality as a concept itself. Immediately, we see a switch, right? From the word God to human spirit, openness with the universe, hope, nature, essence of life, feeling, and interior dialogue, right? These are what people think of. These are how people understand spirituality. So it's important for us to recognize how we're interacting with these concepts when we're with our clients. So clients who are engaged in a recovery journey inevitably come across spirituality in the process. Their connections and understanding may vary, but it's often presented as a necessary and given for recovery. Indeed, even in my work at TK, I introduce spirituality by saying that we see spirituality as integral and essential to their healing and recovery. I say that because I believe it's true, not because I am forcing clients into a predetermined spirituality. In the 12-step system, whether AA, NA, OA, or others, the first introduction to spirituality comes in step 2. That says, came to believe that higher power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Power greater than ourselves, higher power. How individuals define higher power varies. It can be religious, or it can be involving nature, universe, beauty, love, community, where there's energy and life. There's so many ways to define spirituality. And yet, 12-step has a very hard time overcoming the language of Christianity. It actually challenges many, many people. When Christianity is seen as a choice, but also an impossible choice, intense feelings can arise in clients. I have residents at our facility who will not come to spirituality because immediately their first thought is Christianity. It doesn't matter what I'm talking about, and we very rarely talk about Christianity in our spirituality group, but people have an immediate reaction and rejection of it. So there was a study done of how people who engage in AA or any of the 12-step programs, but most specifically AA, interact with this concept of spirituality. One of the participants in this study about the brain disease model of addiction from 2018 said, his name is Sean. He said, even all through rehab, I couldn't get it. I just couldn't get it. Because rehab is actually more religious than your standard AA meeting. It's really people believing about the power of God. It's almost like everybody I encountered who worked in the recovery services is very Christian and very conservative, almost all Republicans. So that, for me, was the tricky part. Like, we don't agree on anything. Our belief systems are so different. But even when I was like, I don't know if I believe any of that, they were like, well, this is a faith-based program. This is what we're here for. I got in all these fights with my counselor, Britt, just because I felt like what they're saying was, you don't have to believe in Jesus. You can pick anything. But everyone eventually picks Jesus. So I feel like they were just stalling us until this moment that you actually come around. This feeling that Britt had, Sean had of otherness, of outcastness, of not belonging in the face of spirituality is not unusual for the 12-step program. I found that many women in our program can in fact get on board with the 12 steps. They can get on board with the idea of group dynamic, of the ideas of surrender and self-understanding, but at times the higher power doesn't feel real. What is being surrendered to can feel nameless and unknown, and the unknown can be quite scary. Sean eventually came to science as his higher power, thanks to the brain disease model of addiction, which helped him to understand a neuroscientific approach to addiction, one where he could be released, yes, in that spiritual sense of release, from his sense of failure, shame, and weakness. Sean learned that it was not simply a moral failing on his part to struggle with addiction, but actually a chemical scientific reality. What we see in Sean's example is that spirituality is not limited by religion. Spirituality comes to existence through relationship, connection with what makes meaning out of our lives. Sean's shame over his addiction limited his recovery, but knowing that body chemistry impacted his thought processes helped him to trust that it was not just him and his thoughts alone in recovery, but his body participated in the recovery journey, whether as friend or betrayer. So the importance of spirituality is because it is an inter, and transpersonal experience that is shaped and directed by the experiences of the individual and of the communities in which they live. Everyone encounters spirituality on some level. It's interpersonal in that it refers to the quest for inner connectivity, and it's interpersonal because it's about the relationship between people. And it's transpersonal because it reaches far beyond ourselves and others into the transcendent realms of experience, those that move beyond what's available to us at the mundane level. Think about the image of the lizard and the hand, right? That's so far beyond what we daily experience and the mundane. Humans are on a constant quest for meaning and belonging, and they actually want to find it. As we think about spirituality, certain themes seem to arise. These are the universal experiences that undergird life itself. Themes most relevant for understanding spirituality are the ways in which people connect to gratitude, forgiveness, love, hope, and meaning. The human spirit is the essential force of life that helps us to connect and vitalizes our experience and our recovery journey. As we, as clinicians, as practitioners, offer whole person care, we recognize that we do have mind, body, and spirit. Spirit is not a separate concept from personhood. Once we begin to heal the body, the spirit follows. Spirituality provides a gateway into meaning-making functioning of the person we serve. As clinicians, we want to know our clients as people, to understand them in order to honor their dignity and engender their recovery. Now, there's been an increase in studies throughout the years regarding the relationship between spirituality and recovery, most in terms of substance abuse. In one study, there was a relationship between personal spirituality and recovery, and the author found that not only did a greater proportion of recovering individuals report having faith beliefs attaching importance to spirituality than those who continued relapse, but also the converse. Relapsing individuals manifested lower levels of spirituality than those in recovery states. So what we see is that there's growing evidence that spirituality can be a conduit for recovery. It can be a way to connect to these things, and it can help us to steady ourselves for this road for recovery. But it's important to note that the role of spirituality in recovery shows only modest positive correlation to a person's outcome. Spirituality is not the key to recovery, but it is an aid to the journey, one that promotes positive coping mechanisms and engenders positive recovery stories and experiences. It is not easy to prove the exact correlation, but it is simple to understand that once someone believes in the soul, in their own soul, in faith, whatever faith it may be, this will shape one's beliefs, attitudes, and response in recovery. Worldviews, the way that we see the world and interact with them, are in fact influenced by our perspective, experiences, upbringings, and desires. So today we look at one meaningful concept in spirituality, and that is gratitude. So what do we mean by gratitude? Aristotle, in his book Rhetoric, speaks of the emotion of charis, or of gratitude. It's the feeling of indebtedness to someone who is our benefactor. It's often translated as kindliness, benevolence, goodwill, gratitude, or grace. Gratitude seems to be a transactional experience. One receives something unexpected or in good favor and responds in a similar manner. In general, it's associated with positive effect. The Latin word gratia refers to the giving and receiving. Conceptualized gratitude is the ability to notice, appreciate, and savor the elements of one's life. This is, in fact, reminiscent of mindfulness. Gratitude is a lived experience. It's bodily and spiritual, and it's accessible to anyone, regardless of their tradition. Gratitude is linked to contentment, happiness, healthy pride, hope, life satisfaction, optimism, empathy, perspective taking, and positive effect. People who experience gratitude have decreased psychopathology, less neurotic personalities, positive relationships, and better well-being, and a humanistic orientation of functioning. Gratitude brings people out of their heads and into the moment. Gratitude on a physical level has also been linked with higher amounts of sleep, more refreshment following sleep quality, less time to fall asleep during the day, and better daytime functioning. Researchers found a 65% increase in dopamine levels in those who practiced yoga nidra. Yoga nidra, just so you know, is a yoga practice that's very slow, very calming, hold positions for long periods of time, and enables rest within our bodies. It is noted that during meditation, there's an increase in the release of dopamine in the brain. And this increase is associated with higher consciousness, sensory or imagery perceptions, and a relaxed and positive experience. So how does gratitude do this? Basically, by connecting people to themselves and others, stopping in the midst of our chaos by appreciating what we have and why we have it. Almost all cultures, all religions have a connection with gratitude and place importance in it. For instance, in Christianity, we have the quote from Colossians 3:15, "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body, you were called to peace, and be thankful." As well, in Islam, it says, "Oh, you who believe, eat of the good things we have provided for you, and give thanks to Allah, for it is Him that you serve." In Islam, gratitude is an act and a form of worship. It's about giving back to the one who created us, the one who we submit to, and showing our interactions and investment in our faith. In Buddhism, the Buddha taught, that's the blessed one in the quote, "Now, what is the level of a person with no integrity? A person with no integrity is ungrateful and unthankful. This ingratitude, this lack of thankfulness is advocated by rude people. It's entirely on the level of people with no integrity. A person of integrity is grateful and thankful. This gratitude, this thankfulness is advocated by civil people, and it's entirely on the level of people of integrity." In fact, the practice of gratitude helps to cultivate patience. And patience is one of the paramitas, or perfections, the Buddha taught his followers to cultivate. Through patience, much is accomplished, including the ability to hold on when life is difficult. This last one I want to point out is from the Wiccan tradition. Some of you may not be familiar with Wicca, but in Wiccan tradition, gratitude is essential to the practice of witchcraft. And in fact, the belief in Wicca is that witchcraft is in fact an expression of gratitude. When witchcraft is practiced, we're honoring our ancestors, the land, animals, plants, and the spirits around us. This act of gratitude takes many forms, from setting up an altar to offerings, and plays an important part in our own transformation. By expressing gratitude, we contribute to our own happiness and form a deep connection with the world around us, both of which are important to personal development. In Wicca, there's no idea of heaven per se. It's all about this life here and now, which in some ways gives people more ownership of what they do with their time and how they appreciate one another and how they express what's on their heart. Gratitude can, in fact, be a moral and ethical principle. Ethical in the sense that it shapes the questions that we ask ourselves and others. It teaches how to see the world and ourselves in the world. Moral in the sense that it teaches behaviors in response to stressful scenarios. Gratitude can, in fact, be a habit, something cultivated over time that shapes how we see our world. It can be emotional, a response to something, much like the definition where it's a give and a take. And it helps us to see the world differently. Gratitude is part of the 12-step process. When consuming alcohol, an individual concentrates on themselves and cannot appreciate the good received every day from God or other people, and cannot express gratitude for themselves. It's like a blinding of the self to the self and the outside world. Maintaining sobriety should lead to noticing the gifts one receives, thanks to which their feelings of grief, anger, or loneliness can be replaced with positive emotions like gratitude. Consider for yourself how often you discuss gratitude with your clients. Is there room to add gratitude as a practice with your clients in your discussions? And yet we must be careful not to moralize gratitude. One of the difficulties of relating spirituality and gratitude is that spirituality can take on a moral component. This runs the risk of making clients feel like they've existentially failed at life due to their dependence on substances. Addiction is not simply a moral issue. It is physical and emotional as well. Morally, recovery does not mean that one has spiritually conquered the spirit of addiction. Rather, it indicates a striving and a connection to the experience of the self in relation to the world. Gender-wise, a recent study has found that women generally demonstrate higher levels of religiousness and spirituality than men in referring to the spiritual sphere in stressful situations. Yet in the face of deepening disappointments with close relations, addicted women may turn away from spirituality as a positive source of life. This may be due to the moral implications of addiction and the feeling of self-blame and unrealized expectations. These addictions draw them into questioning themselves, the love of others, and the relationship that they had with their higher power. By reintroducing spirituality to clients, perhaps through understandings of gratitude and forgiveness, gradually women become more connected to others, see themselves as trustworthy, and restore faith in themselves and their spiritual selves. So, spirituality is, in fact, a tool for resilience. And resilience is about the ability to bounce back, right? Allowing people to see themselves as constantly in motion, to recognize that they can recover from the hardships of life. They can bounce back. Those who experience gratitude feel more connection to what's gone on in their lives before and more desire for restoration. So how do we engage clients with gratitude? One possible way is through a gratitude journal, encouraging people to write down what it is that they care about on a daily basis. This is actually an ancient practice. It relates back to the Stoics in the early BCs, who would advocate that the people should write down 3 things that they're grateful for and 3 things that they should do better the next day. And then the next day, they know they start over again in a new way of seeing the world. As well, I included the image of the apples, mindfulness, right? Taking a sense of appreciation for the small things in life and really appreciating, is it just an apple or is there more to it? What's it like to crunch into something? What's it taste like? Appreciating all those little moments. Or having people observe nature, taking on the moments of observing what's going on around us, being mindful of what's important and why we do the things that we do, keeping awareness of our emotions, our thoughts, and moving through the things that we're going through. Now, one thing to recognize is that gratitude is not about dismissing the negative. It's not about turning around and saying, oh, what happened to me in the past wasn't that bad. In fact, one of the gifts of gratitude is recognizing that gratitude is about saying, yes, what I went through, that was really hard. That was really bad. And here's where I am now. and this is what it's brought me, and this is what I'm going to do now that I've experienced that. It brings us out of our thoughts and into the present moment. So how do you do this with clients? How do you help them to engage in gratitude? So we're going to do a little gratitude activity. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to think for yourself in your mind. Recall a specific moment of gratitude, a moment where you felt connected and loved. Now I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and settle into your seat. Allow your body to rest. Take a moment and remember your moment of gratitude. And we're going to do this mindful activity together. So I invite you to take a deep breath in and let it out. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Take a moment to ask your higher power to help you reconnect to this moment of gratitude. A moment where you felt connected and loved. Maybe it was someone's kindness that made a difference in your life. Perhaps your moment of gratitude is a joy-filled experience or a special moment with loved ones. Or maybe it's a place, perhaps in nature. Replay this memory, this experience in your mind's eye. Allow yourself to go back to that moment of gratitude with your 5 senses. Look around the scene. What do you see? Notice the colors, the details. What are the sounds you hear? Can you feel your feet on the ground? Are you holding anything? Is there any smell or fragrance? Or perhaps a taste? Notice what it feels like in your body right now as you recall this memory. Allow yourself to identify and name those feelings and emotions. Notice what part of your body you're experiencing that emotion. Allow yourself to remain there for a moment. Take a moment to offer thanks to those involved in your moment, to your higher power for remembering the moment, to the place your moment took place, to yourself for remembering. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Take a deep breath in and let it out. You can start to come back to the room, open your eyes when you're ready. So this is an activity that we do here at TK with our residents, and it allows them to connect deep inside. And after this, we elicit a response from them in that we have them write a letter of gratitude. It can be to the moment, it can be to someone involved in that, it can be to themselves or their higher power, or it can be to something different, because we have people share the moment. And I've had clients talk about how they've felt their body for the first time in a long time, or how they've recognized how much someone means to them. So I encourage you all to incorporate gratitude and spirituality into your practices, to seek out ways to support your clients in their own spiritual journey and to help them discover a deeper side of themselves and to use those deeper sides of themselves to connect with the greater world, to know that they're a part of something so much bigger than even themselves. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I believe we'll have a chance for a time of questions for a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was very good and good information. So yeah, if you have a question, please use that Q&A box at the bottom. And Kim and I will read those out. Just a note, I recently went through the FBI Academy resiliency training, and one of the big things that they emphasized was gratitude, and how a daily gratitude journal will help first responders deal with the stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So very powerful.
I think it's very powerful for people.
Yes, I want to say thank you, first of all. Working both in business development and on the clinical side of treatment, there was just a lot of great things that you said. Some I've never heard before, some I have, but I needed to hear again. I'm not seeing any questions up at this time. I'm seeing a lot of people that are grateful. For instance, Stephanie Johnson was just commented that it was a beautiful exercise. And I want to say that too. Thank you. I needed that. Thank you, TK. Let's see. I've had several people talking about a great definition, and they may have been talking about spirituality at that point or the gratitude. Claudette Morgan says, awesome presentation. I wanted to thank you for, at the very beginning, your Martin Luther quote, where you talked about the faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. I thought I'd heard everything. I've never heard that one, but I can tell you as a person in recovery that I can identify with that. And coming into, trying to get into treatment, and I didn't have a problem being a believer. I had a really big problem with practicing it or believing that it could affect or help my addiction. So to me, that the staircase was the steps. And I honestly, I couldn't reach the spirituality or the gratitude without taking the staircase. You know what I mean? Either looking at it as going up or even a staircase as going down. It was, and those were, those were the steps. So that was just a really cool little example. I'm going to remember that one and keep it. And then I loved how you talked about, meeting patients where they're at. A lot of times they don't have, they're not coming into our treatment in our offices looking for therapy in a really great spiritual place. Typically they're depleted no matter what. And to expect that to just, let's get spiritual, and then you'll get better is often usually unachievable. But the fact that we can focus on gratitude regardless of a spiritual nature or a belief system is really powerful. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because that is something that, regardless of where you stand in your belief systems or your past or what's happened to you, being able to choose gratitude, and then when I choose gratitude, and I think everyone will agree, my whole perspective changes. And it seems like I have to choose it every day because I don't wake up with that chosen gratitude. I have to, so
much like when you wake up in the morning, what are you first going to do for yourself, right? Like, what's the choice that you make? Do you just get out of bed and run to the bathroom, or do you get out of bed and think about what's the first thing you're going to do, right? And so what if you made gratitude the practice, and that you wake up and say you're grateful for one thing, whether it be getting out of bed or some hope for the day? It can be something that really puts a lens on our eyes for how we see the world too, right? So everything's not about harming us, but appreciating it as well.
Absolutely. And I can say it's everything to me, is being able to choose that and just knowing that it doesn't always come natural. Linda McKnight is asking, will we be able to get or print for ourselves the notes or PowerPoint notes so we can absorb more? This is a great message. Thank you so much. So Eric, explain, because that comes up a lot.
Yes, it is. It's up to you. Dr. Hulford, do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I will send it to you in a little bit.
Okay, great. And I could post that on our website at spiritualcarenet.org. And Linda, seeing you, Linda is actually one of the ones that participates in our monthly ministry forum. And I just want to bring that up too. That is a web meeting we do on the first Thursday, usually, of each month, unless we have to reschedule it for some reason. And it's made up of people in the ministry or passionate about the ministry to come together. And what we do is we talk about things, current issues or mental health subjects, and then we break off into small groups. And then we often pray together and do a little worship time with music, and it's kind of powerful. So if you're interested in doing that, look for details on our email blast. And if you're not signed up for the email blast, let me know or go to our website and sign up. So, sorry, I got a little off the subject there.
No, good job. I do have one more question from Mary Angeli Fortuno. And she's saying, with the Maslow pyramid, how can you deal with the love, belonging, and if you are in a period of accepting, setting goals, and transitioning?
So I think like the hierarchy of needs in Maslow, right, it's separated, and yet we can easily move through them, right? So it may be that at one point we pick up something from the spirituality, from the belonging on top, and bring it down into those moments of acceptance, right? So learning to incorporate how those themes play into what it means to accept where we're at in our journey, what's gone on in our lives, and to make those connections in that way. So spirituality, belonging may be above, right? But at the same time, there's elements of it that bleed in. It's not like a distinct line between the two.
Awesome. Incredible.
Great.
All right. I'm looking to see. Mainly what we're just getting is lots of kudos and thank yous. And yeah, amazing. Thank you. I want to let everybody know, anybody anywhere near the Woodlands or Houston, we do have a live networking event face-to-face at the Woodlands Methodist Church on Monday at 11:30. And Eric, what's happening that day? Tell us what's up. Is it just a lunch and networking?
Yes, so we're going to share resources with each other and come together, and it's going to be the lunch provided by New Dimensions. And so they're going to provide.
Great.
Sign up for that. And others going around the state of Texas. I believe Austin just had one, or they're about to have one as well. So, and I want to say thanks to Diane too for helping to coordinate this today and represent Timberline Knolls, straight from Dallas.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. It's great. And I'm so glad that Chaplain Liz was able to share with everyone. I love listening to her speak. She just has a great way of presenting. So
Yes.
yeah, that was amazing. One thing that stood out for me was, the gratitude and not dismissing the negative. I thought that stood out to me too, as far as not just sugarcoating everything and just trying to make everything what you're grateful for, but realizing and recognizing the journey and how you got there.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, we're coming up to the end of the hour. Dr. Hulford, would you mind closing us in a word of prayer?
Sure, I would be happy to. Let's bow our hearts in a moment of prayer. Oh, gracious and holy one, you who we call our higher power, we give you thanks for this time together. Thank you for this ability to reflect on the spirit that moves within us and around us, for the ways that it connects us to ourselves and to you. Bless us and help us to engage in gratitude. May we see it more fully in our lives and learn of it to help us to engage with others and to promote the healing of this world. Guide our steps and our hearts, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you
Kim,
so
for
much.
co-hosting.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Diane, for sharing your Dr. Hulford with us. We sure appreciate it. And yeah, you need to come see us here in Houston. Come see us if you're ever in the area. I know you're coming soon, but you'll have to call me about that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone.
All
Thank
righty.
you, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for all
Have
the
a great weekend.
participation. You guys take it easy. Have a great weekend.